Well, I'm not going to penalize people who were here punctually and got in and signed up, so I'm going to start this off. And thank you for showing up this afternoon. We are here as part of the city's public participation process to get your input into adult use marijuana. My name is Clyde Robinson. I'm the city attorney, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to do this afternoon. First, I want to give you a little bit of, I guess, my perspective, and that's the city's perspective. First, we're not intending to roll back or not permit adult use marijuana in the city of Kalamazoo. In October, the City Commission opted to delay our opt-in until June 1st of this year. And this is because so as to protect this process of getting public input as to what the city, how the city should go about addressing this issue. And we also understand that when this was on the ballot here locally to legalize marijuana, 75% of city voters said yes. That means that, and so we're not going to try to undo that. There's clearly a desire for marijuana businesses and the legality of it to exist in our community. However, that also means that 25% of the people said no. And that is a voice that also should be respected and listened to. And so, in that regard, I guess and there's a process, there's a provision in the statute that the community can actually, by voter initiative, limit or ban commercial marijuana businesses in their community. Last year, 2019, 15 Michigan communities had those ballot questions for voters to respond to. Out of those 15, 11 communities said no. Only 4 said yes, we'll prevent commercial businesses in our community. I don't know what that says, but it's interesting. I find that it's kind of maybe the NIMBY. It's okay to legalize marijuana, but commercialization of it, I don't necessarily want it in my community. Again, I'm not saying that Kalamazoo is going to go down that route, but it does raise some issues in terms of, and I don't want to call anybody out, but how many of you in the room actually read the statute? Not the little caption before yes or no, but the actual law. Well, more than I thought. I mean, you read it first, okay. How many of you understood it after you read it? That's what I thought. Because I got a feeling a lot of people didn't read it and said legalization of marijuana without understanding that means you're welcoming the possibility of welcoming commercial businesses in your community. So going forward, that's what the city is attempting to do, is to wrestle with that idea as to what are we going to do in terms of legalizing commercial businesses in our community. So with that, I'm going to introduce a few of the resource people that we have working for the city who are invested in this question, in this issue. Not everybody mentioned on this slide are here this afternoon, but they may come a little bit later. First is Mr. Peter Eldridge. He's our assistant city planner, and so he's going to help figure out where these businesses should be located. And the other person is in the back, Dorla Bonner. She's our most recently appointed Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director. And so she's playing a role in terms of the social equity piece that's baked into the act and the city is going to embrace. So with that as kind of an overview, let's get started. I'm going to first, and again, since a lot of you raised your hands and you understood the act, I'm going to try to go through these first few slides rather quickly because I think you're probably all familiar with it. But again, I don't know my audience, and there may be some people who are not as familiar with the statute as others. So just a quick overview. Where have we gone in the last 10 years? 2008, the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act permitted medical use by registered patients and caregivers. Unfortunately, there were some gaps in that law because there was no way to really, how do you get it? How do you grow it? How can you commercialize it? That was a hole in the act. It took another 8 years for the legislature to pass the Michigan Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, which did create a system of what they call seed to sale. They permitted growers, licensed growers, licensed processors, and provisioning centers who could then sell it, as well as people who would transport it and test the product. Then in 2018, again, a citizen initiative made for the legalization of adult use or recreational marijuana, and again, the one little twist to that is under the 2016 Act, municipalities did not have to do anything. They could sit on their hands and no businesses could come into the community until they affirmatively said yes. The initiative in 2018 turned that around in that communities were engaged and were involved in the commercialization or permitting commercialization of marijuana unless they opted out. And there are approximately 1,470 municipalities, cities, villages, townships in the state of Michigan. 1,470 approximately. Out of that number, according to the Michigan Marijuana Regulatory Agency, 35 have said yes, over 1,400 have said no to the commercialization of adult use marijuana in their communities. Again, that's something that is kind of interesting given the fact that the state of Michigan overwhelmingly approved the 2018 initiative. So this is an idea as to what are the types of businesses involved. Currently in the medical one, there are 5 classifications. I won't go through them all, but that's the 5 businesses, and they're all permitted in the city of Kalamazoo. Now, they're not permitted in all areas of the community, but they're all permitted in Kalamazoo. This is what the new Act did in 2018. It took the first 5 and basically kept them the same, but notice there's some changes in the number of plants. And I point out that difference will be in those slides. I will also show that difference a little more graphically. But they also changed the name of the provision center to now that you're a retailer if you're involved in adult business. So okay, provision center on the medical side, retailer on the adult use side. And then there's the new category, a micro business, which is a small, I think ostensibly a mom and pop business that is a vertically integrated grow, process, and retail sale, all at one location. And you're capped at 150 plants. There, in the statute, also permitted the state of Michigan, through its administrative agency, to create other licenses. They didn't name them, but they just said you have the ability to do that. And that's been done. There are now 4 other types of licenses that are available from the state. And again, we'll get into that. Interestingly enough, even among those 35 communities, as of the last count, according to the state, that have opted into commercial marijuana, the vast majority said no to all of this. Again, so something to be aware of, that it's those communities even that have opted in or decided to welcome adult use commercialization have said no to these various licenses. This is kind of a more side-by-side comparison of the last 2 slides. I want to point a couple of things out, and this is it'll also be mentioned in some later slides. In order to get on the adult use side, the licenses in blue, for the first 24 months that the state is accepting licenses, and they began accepting licenses in November of last year. So until November of 2021, you have to be a Michigan resident to either get a micro business or a Class A grower for adult use marijuana. You must have a medical license for the green ones, so that you're not going to be able to get a Class B or a processor or a retailer unless you already have the license for medical sales. That's for the first 2 years. But again, that may be subject to change. I'll come to that in a later slide. But for the most part, for the first 24 months, Michigan resident for 2 classifications, and you have to have your medical license for several others. The ones in black, no problem. You can get those regardless of whether you have a medical license or whether you're a Michigan resident. So what has the state been doing? Well, they created the Marijuana Regulatory Agency. I misspelled it because I spent through spell check again. I let you know spell marijuana as Michigan, and it's Federal Controlled Substances Act. Marijuana is spelled with an H. The Marijuana Regulatory Agency spells their name with a J. But but in their rules, statute is still within reach. So the MRA is the agency within the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs that promulgates the rules and will be issuing the licenses. And they'll be doing some inspections and the like. Those emergency, they issued emergency rules in July of last year, and then in December of last year, Governor Whitmer made those emergency rules in effect for another 6 months. Emergency rules under Michigan law are only good for 6 months, and they can be renewed once, and that's what's being done. So by July of this year, the final rules for adult use marijuana will be promulgated by the state. But right now, everybody's operating under the emergency rules. And it's anticipated they won't change much, but there could be some changes. So as I said, the MRA will be setting purity, testing, labeling, and record-keeping standards. They set rules regarding security, monitoring and tracking of the product, and again, they set the rules for what it takes to be licensed and operate adult use facilities. Interestingly, you should know that under the statute, a prior conviction for a marijuana-related offense does not preclude you from getting an adult use license. However, if that was a conviction for delivery of controlled substance to a minor, that's a disqualifying conviction. The other thing is, even if you do have a prior conviction for marijuana, the state can deny you a license if you are a person with a pattern of convictions involving dishonesty, theft, or fraud. That's in the administrative rules. So, again, just because hopefully you don't have criminal background, if you have criminal background involving marijuana, you're okay, but if you've got a history of embezzlement, theft, or something, that may preclude you from getting licensed by the state. And again, the first 24 months, as I indicated 2 slides ago, as to what you can and can't do. Now, the caveat, and it's maybe a little time for you to read, the asterisk, in 1 year, so in November of this year, the state can decide to say we're going to do away with the requirement of being a Michigan resident and/or the requirement that you have to have a medical license in order to get some of these other adult use licenses. But they have to make a finding. They have to find that either one of 3 things is happening. Number 1, they need to expand the licensures so as to minimize the illegal market. I don't know how they're going to find that out, but they're going to have to make a finding that the only way that they can make an impact on the black market is by expanding who can get a license. Number 2, is there a demand for marijuana that's not being effectively met? So we've got to expand it. And then the last one is so as to provide access to rural areas of the state. Those are the 3 conditions written into the statute. Florida has to make that call, so that 24-month window could be reduced to 12 months. But again, wait and see what happens on that. I don't know that the Michigan Regulatory Agency, the Marijuana Regulatory Agency is ready to make that decision today. The state also is tasked under the statute with creating a plan to promote and encourage participation in the marijuana industry by people who have, from communities that have been disproportionately impacted by marijuana enforcement. And so the state identified 41 communities where they found that people in those communities have been disproportionately impacted by marijuana enforcement, and Kalamazoo is one of those communities. And in addition to that, in addition to being able to qualify for that social equity program, I'll get into that in a couple of slides, every adult use facility applicant for licensure must have a social equity plan that they file with the state when they seek application for licensure. So that's something that you have to know going ahead. It's not only in those 41 communities, but anywhere in the state. As a potential licensee, you have to have a social equity plan on file with the state as part of your application. Because the City of Kalamazoo is one of those impacted communities, we are going to require that also in all likelihood when you file for your local licensure. And we may add some things to it. The state's program, as I'm going to go through here, it's kind of bare bones. I'll get to that in a minute, and if, again, from the state, They've reduced the licensing fees from the medical side. These are much reduced, but they're still significant. And again, I apologize for how crowded this slide is, but basically, the big ones are on the extreme left side, and they get a little bit less as you go to the right, in terms all the way to $40,000 a year, and on renewal, if you are a Class C grower or excess grower. Down to a micro business, $8,000, and the renewals, again, I didn't want to crowd the slide with too much data, but the state is going to use a sliding scale. So, for instance, if you are a Class C grower, you pay your $40,000, and you want to renew it after a year, they're going to have a sliding scale. Your renewal could be $30,000, $40,000, or $50,000, based on the weight of product that you've transferred. So, if you're in the top third, you're going to pay the $50,000. If you're in the middle third, you're going to pay $40,000. If you're low, Class C grower, if you're in the bottom third, you're going to pay $30,000. That's what is in the emergency rules. And that same sliding scale should be read for all the other ones. For instance, if you're a micro business and you're $8,000, again, you're going to look to see where you fall within those various thirds, and you will be paying anywhere from $6,000, $8,000 to $10,000 to renew that micro business license. The other thing I should point out is that this is for the state now. Aside from that's for the license itself, just for the application, you have to pay an upfront $6,000 fee to the state. So if you are, again, going to the micro business, you're going to pay $6,000 to the state, and you're going to pay another $8,000. So that's $14,000 year one to operate your business, to get that license from the state. Social equity plan. Now, here's when you get a little break on those fees. That's why I wanted to put them up there. First off, you have to be a resident of one of the 41 impacted communities. If you are, and you can prove that you've been a resident for the last 5 years, you can get a 25% discount in that going back to that micro business, that 8,000 feet. So there's $2,000 off the top on there. And the state is going to require you to show various things, voter registration, maybe tax returns, something that demonstrates you are a resident of those communities for the last 5 years. And if you want to open a business in Kalamazoo, all you have to be is a resident of any of the 41. So, for instance, Muskegon is one of the other communities. You can be a Kalamazoo resident, qualify for the program, but open your business in Muskegon if you wish. And the same would be true in reverse. You can get another 25% off if you have a conviction for a marijuana-related offense. You get another 25% discount. But remember the caveat, it can't be for distribution to a minor. Since that precludes you from licensure. And then you can get another 10% off. And so again, using that $8,000 fee for a micro business, $2,000 for a residency, $2,000 for only one conviction is all it takes, even though you may have more than one. And number 3, you get another 10%, so another $800 off. If you were a registered caregiver for at least 2 years between 2008 and 2017. So that's the state's program. The other requirement is, and I kind of implied it when I made my remarks, is that you have to locate your business in the corporate limit of the impacted community. So that means in Kalamazoo, you can't locate in Portage, you can't locate in Kalamazoo Township or Ashtabel. It has to be in the city of Kalamazoo. Interestingly enough, in regard to residency, and this is a quirk in the law, or at least in the regulation, the marijuana regulatory agency is only looking at zip codes. So if you live in K Township, if you've got a Kalamazoo zip code, they'll look at that as residence in Kalamazoo. So, but where they draw the line is, you've got to locate your facility in the city itself proper. So it's possible for you to be a K Township resident and qualify for this, but you have to locate the business in the city itself. Now we're talking about what can we do on the local level. Our ordinances can't conflict with the statute or the administrative rules or be unreasonably impractical. That's what the law says. The state will issue a license if the two requirements in the statute. It's not within an area zoned for residential use, and not within 1,000 feet of a pre-existing K through 12 school. That means universities are not subject to that. But we may reduce that number. We may reduce that 1,000-foot setback from schools if we choose to do so at the local level. And then we can't prohibit a grower, processor, retailer from operating within the same facility or from the same location shared with a medical. So, for instance, if you are a provisioning center, you have the right under the statute. We can't prohibit you from being a retailer at the same location. And that makes some sense, but that's what the statute requires. Again, we may require, we don't have to, but we can require a local license to operate within the city, and so we're likely to do that because we've already done it on the medical side. We can charge an annual fee of up to $5,000 to help defray the cost of enforcement and administration, and if we choose to cap it, again, we did not cap or attempt to cap on the medical side, but if we cap on the adult use side, we used a lottery on the medical side, which we're permitted to do. Lotteries are not permitted on the adult use side. We have to use a competitive process. And the process should be aimed to select those applicants who are best suited to operate in compliance with the statute. I'm going to be asking you for your input on that because I don't know how you do that. How you determine through some type of competitive process who is going to be a conscientious and good corporate neighbor in our community. But that's what the statute says. The state can also regulate signage, and we can also limit the time, place, and manner of operation. And just so you know that we are preempted from regulating CBD. And that is defined as if it has less than 0.3% THC in it. So you've seen all the CBD signs up. You can't do anything about it. And that is also, interestingly, not regulated by the Marijuana Regulatory Agency. That's regulated by the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, called NDAR. And so CBD and hemp, that's Department of Agriculture, medical marijuana, and adult use marijuana, that's under the Marijuana Regulatory Agency of the state. So what has been the City of Kalamazoo's response? Well, the first thing is amend our ordinances to come into compliance with changes that occurred both in the Medical Licensing Act and the Adult Use Act. And that's why those smiley faces up there, we've already done that. We've updated our ordinances so they are up to date, at least in that regard. What's left? Amend our zoning code to define what kind of businesses we're going to permit and where we're going to permit them, and then draft the ordinance in regards to licensing. And those are the questions is, are we going to limit? If we limit, what's the competitive process that should be used to figure out who gets a license and who doesn't? Do something that's complementary to the state. And again, what should a local social equity piece look like in terms of giving an opportunity for those individuals who have been impacted by marijuana enforcement over the years. So I'm going to open it up for questions. We're here to hear from you. And when I say questions, these are questions we're asking you. We want your input. As we said, we have a public participation model. I gave you just an overview. And so we're asking you, we're reaching out as we're crafting our ordinances. Tell us what you want to see or some ideas of what you want to see. I'm not saying they'll all be incorporated, but we want to get that feedback from individuals who are going to be impacted either as a neighbor, as a potential customer, as a potential business person, or even if you're opposed to it and you have to live with it. But what are those concerns? As I said, just because 25% of people lost in the vote, that's a significant vote. That's 1 out of every 4 persons said no. And that voice has to be heard and recognized as well. So with that, I'm going to throw it open to Dorla and Pete and myself. And so we want to hear from you. And so we got several slides. And the first piece is, because this is really important to the City of Kalamazoo, is the social equity piece. I gave you kind of the bare bones what the state's doing. The state is saying, we're going to give you a discount on your application and licensing fees, and that also goes to renewal, by the way, as well. So if you qualify under the social equity. But there's more to it than that, it seems to me. That what can we do to assist those individuals who have been impacted by marijuana in either that community, so as to give people who are on the outside looking in. I mean, for instance, if somebody's been selling the small bags of marijuana on the street corner and got pinched 10 years ago, and they've got a good product. I'm not saying I'm not saying that they're importing it from Mexico. This is just the guy that's growing stuff and trying to make a little bit of coin on the side. And it's recognized. The state has recognized that people who have the good flower, the good bud, or whatever it's called, that they can transfer under certain circumstances some of that to processors in like 3 years. So it's getting into the system anyway. And so what can we do to help these individuals out who don't have the large capitalization requirements that's required on the medical side? But they can do a micro business as a Michigan resident. What can they do to grow that as 150 plants and be able to process it and sell it legally? Something that they got convicted for maybe 10 years ago. So that's what we're after. Joel, go ahead.
I just want to add why this is so important to the city of Dallas with social equity. If you were to go to, and I encourage you to do this while you're thinking about what you're going to do, go to our strategic vision and look at our goals. We have 3 goals that are rolled outside. Say it right? Well, like that is the nothing right here. They are strengthen diversity. If you look at this room, we already see it as black diversity. This is what we said, and we got these goals from community input. So it wasn't something in the corner. This is many, 18 months, 15 months of engagement, shared prosperity, and economic vitality. So those are things that we as an organization have promised our community that we would follow through on. And so wherever there's an area for us to impact our goals, that's where that's how we're looking. And also bear in mind that Clyde Robinson, thank you, said that we have the right, regulatory from the regulations, to amend and to expand on the social equity beyond what the state has said. And that is our intention. So we really want to hear from you, but that's where we're coming from. It's just not something we thought of. This is a part of the goals that the community said we need to do. And in other areas, we are doing them. So everything as part of our equity vision is to look through our stuff and our ordinances and our actions and our communications with you through those lenses. Cool?
I mean, in that regard, the statistics are apparent that the enforcement of marijuana laws have been unequally imposed on people of color and minority communities. This is what this is aimed at, as to what can we do to, I don't want to say right that wrong, but to give those folks an opportunity to participate in the industry that resulted in a criminal conviction. Yep. So those are the 3 questions: is what are the obstacles for individuals attempting to get into the business? Again, on the medical side, there was the state rules had significant capitalization requirements. You had to show liquid assets of a substantial amount in order to get a license, which basically precluded and closed the door to a lot of minority business people of getting into the market. And so that's one thing. The other questions is, how can the needs of disproportionately impacted local residents? That's the other thing that is implied by Dora's remarks and what our goals are. As I said, you can come from Muskegon and open a business in Kalamazoo. What we want to do is, what can we do to assist Kalamazoo residents to locate in our community and give them an opportunity to flourish? And then, what can we, other than that, what can be done to directly impact and improve the lives of local residents? So, I think this gentleman was first.
Yeah, so and we're going to, what we're looking for is specifically related to social equity as far as any questions or comments you have about the license types. We'll get into that after this. that'll be coming next. So, go ahead.
You did say that the city had the ability to add an extra up to $5,000 charge, correct? Locally?
Correct.
So perhaps one idea is if someone is able to show that they were negatively impacted by the prohibition, perhaps if they spent some jail time in county jails or maybe court fines, maybe think about waiving the city end of that fee for those individuals. I know it's not going to do a ton on the state side, but at least, you know, you can do your part, and like you said, it's not necessarily righting or wrong, but you can ease that financial burden on people who may have already been burdened financially by the prohibition.
And that's one of the things we consider. We can certainly follow that state model by waiving fees for individuals who might otherwise qualify at the state level, and maybe add some other things that would increase the pool of people who might qualify. Yes, sir.
Operational question. So my understanding of the MMFLA is that the MMFLA bars anybody with a marijuana conviction within the last 5 to 10 years from both ownership and being hired. And this is a multi-part question. Is that accurate as far as you know?
I have to look at it.
As far as I understand it, that's accurate. Anybody here who has an MMFLA should be able to answer that, whether they can hire somebody who has a marijuana record. So my second question relating to the social equity pieces, does that also mean then if somebody is dual licensed, they have an MMFLA license and they have a vertical license, that they will still be barred from hiring anybody who has one of those criminal records, including a marijuana arrest record, because they have to maintain their dual licenses for those first 2 years? Is that accurate?
That's an excellent question, and that should be directed to the marijuana regulation agency, the regulatory agency, see how they're going to answer that. Because that's really a state question. But it's an excellent one. If you're in that, that brings an interesting economy. Yes, sir.
Are these social equity plans to add more taxable revenue to the budget, or are they actually built to help the community?
Listen, this is not a tax grab or fee grab in any way, particularly for waiving fees. And the other thing I would point out, 5,000, all those fees that I put on that one slide, that all goes to the state. The city doesn't see any of that. The only thing that we get is that up to $5,000 fee that we can charge for our local licensing. The other thing I would point out is that under Michigan law, your licensing fee can exceed the actual cost or the approximate cost of administering the program. And quite frankly, we have not, at least the city of Kalamazoo has not charged a $5,000 licensing fee. I don't know exactly what it is, but Kirk would know, but it only is intended to cover the actual costs of his office and, like for instance, fire inspectors, time that it takes to look at the facility and all that. That's all encompassed in that fee, and our costs are well below 5,000. So it's not a money grab by any stretch.
Yeah, I would like to add to that because of this new regulation for adult use marijuana, it took away the taxation part that's applied to the medical marijuana. So we are going to have to look at that very closely because we anticipate there's going to be more public safety demand around some of these facilities. This is something that it's new to the community, and a lot of the facilities that we have provisional licenses to are still under construction right now. So we still don't understand the impact once all these facilities get online, what that's going to do for our public safety department. There's nothing in the back there.
So the second part of that is, if it's not about taxes, why not acknowledge the businesses that have been existing for 10 years with the medical act and increase my accounts to caregivers that already have these things figured out?
To increase the plant count for those that are caregivers.
Those businesses exist and have for 10 years.
Well, I mean, the difficulty is many of those are being operated out of basements, homeowners.
Or fields or greenhouses.
Yeah, I mean, if it's.
Well, and in that regard, the city is, we can't change the state rules. We can't permit something that the state prohibits. So if you're, as a caregiver, you're capped at 12 plants per patient.
That's your biggest shortcoming.
We can't, the city can't touch that. That's state law.
We also can out of the statutory requirement equity plan. And so when you go back to how the equity plan has been described, it is to support the folks who are impacted by the plant industry. So if we just support people who are already in it, then we fail to support people who have been impacted. So it's really just a balance on how to do it also. So we gotta do it, because they said we gotta do it, and we need to do it because we need to do it.
Yes, sir.
So I just gotta say, the social equity portion, right? Just by participating in the industry of marijuana, we're already being impacted because money's just not available. You have to try to source money, right? So if you really want to help anyone who help that, it's opening things up and getting loans, these application fees, and I calculate about $50,000. That's like pennies.
Again, some of those things are outside of our purview and our ability to impact.
So state chartered banks, locally chartered credit unions, I think you guys could work with them.
Yes, ma'am.
I have some feedback.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
I have some feedback that might help question 1 and 2. In regards to Class C licensing and the municipality being able to stop them, I think that would be a good idea. I worked on a Class C, stacked Class C farm in Bangor this summer, and I don't think it's good for the community. It keeps the micro licenses put down. They ended up failing miserably, so they're not going to be able to provide medicine to all the people in the state at a catastrophic level like that. They got a monopoly on the whole state. They got a few guys that aren't really good at doing this stuff yet. They got a learning curve to get over that are supposed to provide medicine to a bunch of people. And like this guy said, the caregivers have already been doing it for 10 years. They know how to do it better, even out of their basements. They don't really, they're just squeezed out. But the municipalities vote out the Class C's and D's and allow the A's and the micro licensing. I think that would help out the smaller guy at the end of the day.
Yes, sir.
I think something that could be done to address some of the obstacles for people trying to enter business, to enter business. To kind of piggyback on what we talked about the caregivers, is to reduce the restrictions on where the Class A 100 plant farms can go. Because most of these caregivers who've been operating successfully for 10 years are at 72 plants. So it's not that much more to go up to 100. You don't have to have a giant warehouse to grow 100 plants. You might be able to do it in your basement if you have a big enough house. And so the city could, and there's nothing in the state statute that says, unlike the medical plant, they have to be located in industrial or agricultural zones. So if you could make it so that all these caregivers that live in your town can get that Class A, that would be a huge thing for them to address this social equity piece. It would really benefit those people that have been growing for a decade and providing good quality product and allow them to get right into the legal market instead of having to jump through these hoops to go through a processor or a licensed farm and mess with that whole situation. It drastically reduces the startup costs.
Yes, sir.
A little bit point 2 there. Local disproportionately impacted issue after legalization in other states has been with the minors. The minority minors versus white minors are even more disproportionately impacted than they have been here before. So with education, youth education programs, funding for those types of awareness campaigns, and if there's anything the city can do with local police enforcement or programs, diversion programs, before we give all these kids MIPs and put them in the judicial system, we need to stop the cannabis prohibition for minors.
Well, adult use is limited to people 21 and over, so.
I think that's the point, is if we have educational awareness about that fact, and then also if And maybe they have to teach more courses about the harm and errors of marijuana use for people who don't want something to address the youth abuse of this. They want to call it, but without giving these people records that are going to harm them forever. Or even kids from Western who are under 21 but may have cannabis or joint or something, they get arrested, they get a key, that can definitely impact their ability to get student aid, whether it's government student loans or Pell Grants or other financial aid programs. That would still be a controlled substance violation and could jeopardize their ability to get aid in the future. So those are really important things to think about.
I think the biggest, when you talk about obstacles for people that are equity applicants and the smaller businesses, is location, ability to get zonable property, and part of that is zonable property, and the ability to get leases, which is often the tool of small businesses to start, is mostly absent from marijuana due to the title insurance rules that most larger businesses or retail spaces and such have issues with. So I'd say if the city wants to help equity, they need to find a way to provide space for specifically for the smaller businesses so that we don't have the same type of ridiculous increase in real estate prices, and that people can find ways, if there's a way to make available reasonable leases to people who are equity applicants, that would be one of the biggest things that could help equity applicants get into the business. The other thing is making room for the smaller business types that take less to start. I know you say that most cities have not taken up consumption, and they haven't taken up event planner or temporary events, but those are some of the least expensive business types to get involved in. So if the city wants to make a less capital-intensive business model for adult use to happen for some of these people, those are the types of things that they need to do. And I'd say limit those to the small businesses.
I know you said that it's up to you, you are able to have a competitive process to give out the licenses, kind of tacking on to what you said. Maybe across the board, part of that competitive process becomes, if you're going to have a cap on the licenses, maybe the last people to be receiving those licenses are the people that don't really need to get in this business. People that already have a ton of money to invest, perhaps, don't need to be making more money off some. We can be pushing lower income individuals into who have the knowledge and who have the background, are able to do something good with it, but are just being beaten out by people with hundreds of thousands of dollars of capital to drop.
Is there any way to keep it local? In other words, as far as the brewers, that whole industry, we're lucky enough to have Riverdale, or whatever, and all that. But can we keep the roads and the providers locally by ordinances or whatever, however we write it, or is that all done? Can we not say no? Like, we don't want the Muskegon guy come over
We
and grow.
can't discriminate against people with non-residents.
Well, yeah, so the ownership, as far as the equity piece, the ownership's got to be over 50%.
Right.
Of the business, those individuals that are part of the business entity have to be, well, they either have to be local residents here, or they've got to be one of the other identified communities.
Then that person has to have a 51% stake in the business. If there's it is on it's the social equity slide program that is at the Marijuana Regulatory Agency's website, and it's on there. You can click through it, and it goes through what's required for the social equity and how you qualify for that. It is, for those people taking notes, it's basically www.michigan.gov/MRA. You can also find it if you go to the licensing and regulatory affairs, and then you can find the marijuana agency. Click it to that, and they have several. It's pretty easy to navigate. They have stuff on medical, they have stuff on adult use, and they have a box on the social equity, and you click on that box, it takes you to their slide program that you can go through. Because the state was very proactive late last year and very early this year of going around to the impacted communities and putting on a kind of a road show. They were in Kalamazoo at least twice, maybe 3 times, in order to present the program. But I think they're no longer on the road, but they've distilled that presentation down and put it on their website if you're interested in it. Yes?
What are the limitations on allowing variances for equity applicants or local applicants? Is there a possibility that the city can do that and use variances as a tool to do that? And what's the liability that the city opens it up to, or what kind of restrictions are placed on that by the state?
You have to be careful because there's a thing in the 14th Amendment about equal protection. You can't draw classification lines unless there's a good reason to do so. And so we have to be a little careful about that.
Can equity applicant be a classification, seeing as it's a classification that's already been determined by the state?
Yes. And so we could do that.
But you couldn't say local equity applicant, though.
You have to be a little careful about that. But I think there's maybe a little wiggle room. There's some case law on that. It's not as rightly defined as people might like, but yeah, the word of caution about going down that road. I'd have to do some research. Yes, sir.
Can you say a little more about zoning and land use? We have a zoning map up there. I think in the city of Kalamazoo, there's 4 geographic areas that are currently eligible for marijuana businesses. Is that right?
Well, there's approximately 4 zoning districts. And, so this map up here, everybody wants to look at the meeting, was just to represent where the 21 facilities are located. They either have a provisional certificate and they're in the process of doing a build out of an existing building or constructing a new building, or they've already got their certificate of occupancy, got their state operator's license, and then got their local operator's license, and they're now open for business. So this represents all 21 locations. The Delta rings, those are where the provisioning centers are, and that's identifying the 1,000-foot separation distance. So this is just intended to be a representation of what's in the city now, what zone districts, what facilities are in, and I can talk to anybody later about those specifics.
I'd like to follow up because I think that the different types of business we're looking at will have a different impact on surrounding zones, surrounding land uses, right? I mean, I think that everyone would agree that consumption facility is going to have a different impact on the neighborhood than a safety and testing facility, right?
Yes.
It's different business hours, it's different clientele. Possibly a Class A grow facility would have a different impact from safety and compliance for a Class A facility. So is the city looking at whether we might add additional zoned areas for businesses that have lower impact on the surrounding community? I mean, if you look at where the spot is, for example, that's a class in the statewide market for services that is really kind of underserved right now. There's only, 5, 6 safety testing facilities in the whole state right now. And we've got one of them right here. That's a bonus for Kalamazoo. Would it be possible to encourage that kind of activity as, a value-added skill that people in minority communities could learn and then take elsewhere, maybe even outside the marijuana business community?
Yeah, and we are going to get into the license type discussion, but I'll answer your question. I'll see if there's more on the social equity. We do have a number of other commercial zone districts that we give consideration based on these different license types. So that door is open to evaluate our other zone districts, evaluate what more. As you can see on the map, there's a lot of light gray and dark gray. That's the manufacturing zone districts. There's a lot of acreage within that zoning classification. So what more could be done with that area of the city? But that's a very good question. So yes, we are opening the door. We're not just looking at what zone districts we allow to and then applying that to the adult use facilities. Is there any other questions on the social equity side? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for maybe
Or comments?
Yes, so there's a couple questions, and I believe that there's a lot of number of obstacles people are facing regarding resources, money, criminal history, where you live, and things like that. I believe what the state has done is the minimum, and the city could do a lot more as far as providing resources, education, maybe there are specific grants that they can give people, possibly making sure that numbers aren't skewed as far as equity grants or places versus people who just have money to spend and want to be interested in the field. And also to be positively impact the community. I know a lot of these casinos and things like that get taxes and money back to schools. So we kind of need where that money can go as far as impacting the community and locally. I believe, I don't want to say, I think it should be a huge leg up for people impacted on the, less favorable side of marijuana as far as the
It definitely would. I think Dorla can probably speak to this a little bit as far as the funding we utilize right now for our small business assistance. There would be some difficulties with that given the nature of this business compared to some of that being federal dollars. So,
For federal dollars, we don't have federal dollars for it. But that is just general fund, and that hasn't been decided. There are some complications, though, just from the perception of city funding this type of business. So that is a challenge that we have to wrestle with based on our goals. Are we strong enough to take that kind of risk to fund a business that has that kind of baggage behind it? Because there's a lot of baggage behind it. It is what it is. So it hasn't been decided yet. It is a part of, I have a list of things I'm going to ask leadership about. How brave are we? So that's the question. So we're not just asking you all how you can participate. We have to figure it out as well. And it's like it's new to all of you all. This is new to us. This is new territory for all of us. And so, not decided. It's an out of federal dollars. We know it is decided. That's why we don't use federal dollars like in some areas. Because, and it's also too complicated. Because federal dollars are complicated. So, but it has not been decided. We haven't decided. Because we're all in the timeline.
is there any other questions?
So I think, speaking to the social equity piece, that I'm not gonna say it should be a mandate, but I think that when you go into a facility and you're gonna make a purchase or whatever it is, that some of the people that you're gonna make a purchase from should look like you, period. So that it just grows and makes you feel comfortable and it makes you aware. So to the degree that everybody, so we're talking about equity, we're not talking about somebody that has a job in the facility. We're talking about somebody that's either gaining a skill or an ability or a trade that can go and prosper and take it somewhere else and do something else and share it with their community so they don't have to be confined to the constraints of being, despair or on whatever degree. So that, I say that to say this, so that in the city of Kalamazoo, so I work on house, I do flips, I do remodels, I do a lot of things for houses. So that in the city of Kalamazoo, that if you have a house and you stay out of town, you have to have a local agent that is responsible to take responsibility. So I'm not talking about 51%, I'm talking about having actual equity that is for the longevity of the whole community. So diversification, everybody in there put $100 bill inside the bag, and then pass it around, so pick yours. It would be really difficult unless you have a photograph or something like that. So that the green don't have it doesn't care which way it goes. So that it does need to be diverse, and it does need to be shared so that everybody can be prosperous. Because if anybody in here, like grown weed, soul weed, it's enough for everybody. It's enough money for everybody, but you have to care about the situation.
but I can figure it out so that if it was $100,000, let's say it's $100,000 a month. So I am here, everybody. I'm trying to be quiet. I wish that camera was on because I don't like it. But really, for real. But I'm here representing the bar. I want to say 1,000, but I have 800 contacts on my phone because this time that this meeting is set up, like people have first shift jobs, so they're working 7 to 3. But they're not trying to come here. They have children. People have second shift jobs, so they're working 3 to 11. They're not trying to come here. They have responsibilities and things outside here. So it's kind of a weird time to be here. But I'm here representing them. So I was waiting to be one of the last ones so I can get my voice out here. So that if it's $100,000, let's say it's $100,000 for the whole thing, that would in essence be about $125 per month over 800 people. They're going to spend that. So about $100,000 a month is easily doable if you know like people that actually want to spend the money for something that they want for a product or service, whatever it is.
Yeah, so that local hiring preference piece, that's a good one. Okay, just one segue. We are recording this, and our intended plan is to be able to put it up on the YouTube channel for the city has, so that folks that work here today and can't make the meeting next week still have ability to view what's going on.
So one of the things that Grand Rapids did to try and promote social equity in their program was the inclusion of zip code or neighborhood-based hiring standards. So that being one of the competitive things that people could do or businesses could do to get ahead, is that because we can't technically tell a business, we want you to hire people of this color, but what we can say in places like Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo is that we know where certain people that look certain ways live, and we could promote hiring from neighborhoods. And there are businesses that do hiring practices that do location-based hiring, so these businesses can go in there and say, I want to hire from people in this neighborhood alone, and that will narrow down their applicants to people who are in those neighborhoods. The other problem with that comes though, then, if these neighborhoods have been unduly impacted and those people have criminal records, a lot of these people that are MMFLA licensed aren't going to be able to hire anybody who's got a criminal record, which is a huge problem, which is why we need to make room for the smaller business types that are adult use only, because they're free to hire any of those people.
Kind of comment related to that is if you were to do that by zip code, get the idea of focusing on, let's say, a minority or a race or economic, you are in essence defying the Equal Opportunity Act of profiling people or selecting people based upon for the job based upon their race. And so I'm against that because as a business owner, I'm going to hire the most qualified person. I'm going to hire them based upon how they look or based upon where they live.
We can't do it by the zone is the more impacted zone. They do it in Grand Rapids. It's not about the color of someone's skin. They can look and say there are more arrests in that area for marijuana. That's why they're doing it.
But I'm going to hire a person based upon the qualifications, not based upon if they've broken the law before, what their race is, what they are socioeconomic. And I think putting that burden on business owners is unfair.
Well, I'd like those are good points that we're taking notes. I'd like to move on to the next question.
Now, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Related to social equity. So the state social equity plan, in addition to the discounted fees, there is that assistance that they offer. They have a group of 5 employees that are assigned throughout the state to help folks in these particular communities that have the qualify for the social equity, and they offer up services to help fill out forms and other elements of it. Devin Wilker and I were talking earlier about it. But what's everybody's thought on what the state is doing with the additional services they're offering up as part of the social equity piece of that level?
Thus far, it's not very helpful. I spoke at one of the just trying to business plan and get information about what's going to be licensable and not licensable when it comes to consumption lounges from the state. And the response literally being, and telling them, I'm an equity applicant, I talked to an equity person about this. The response was literally, we should go hire a lawyer. We can't interpret our own rules based on the questions you're asking. So from that perspective, I personally haven't found it very helpful. It's nice that they come and do the multiple meetings. And like he said, I'm here for someone else too. I tried to get someone else here from a different color than myself. And because he doesn't have the same privileges that I do, he had to work. Couldn't make it. 3 to 5. And it's good that they're coming and doing multiple meetings and trying to do them at times when more people can do them. It'd be better if they had times in the evening like that, or like more types of times for people. But as far as like when they're not there at the meeting and you're calling the MRA and trying to get information and stuff like that, they're not accessible. And I brought out that whole, so you, as an equity applicant, you're telling me again to go hire a lawyer and ask these questions. And they were like, yep.
Okay, but I mean, that's another piece that we are brainstorming with. Is there anything at the local level we can, assistance, so to speak, that we can provide for individuals that are first timers to this industry, trying to get in our local citizens. So,
and go ahead.
yes, sir.
One of the most tragic things about the legality of cannabis that exists is where we have people that are currently incarcerated for not filing their own licenses. All the rest of the world is becoming legal. I wonder if there's a way that there could be a cooperative pathway to release for the county residents that are currently incarcerated.
Unfortunately, that's under the umbrella of the Department of Corrections at the state level. Not much we can do about that. Now, there are going through, and right now they're in the Michigan Senate. There was a package of 7 or 8 bills that were passed by the Michigan House late last year. They've been gone to the Senate. I don't think they've had hearings on them. If you go to the legislature's website, you can ask for updates. I've not seen an update from the Senate Judiciary Committee. They're going to have hearings on these 8 sets of bills, but they're basically to liberalize the expungement rules in Michigan, so you can get more past crimes expunged off your records. And one of the bills does contain a provision for wiping out marijuana convictions, and kind of doing it across the board without, and still I think you have to go to court, but you'd be able to, you wouldn't be subject to the usual limitations as the number of crimes you can get expunged. And again, that's working its way through the Michigan legislature. I would also point out it was overwhelmingly passed bipartisan elected votes. There's 110 members of the Michigan House, and I think one of the bills that passed only like a 95 to 15 vote. So most of the other ones had over 100 votes apiece. So I think this is moving, at least on the House side. The Senate tend to be a little more conservative group up there, but hopefully both parties will get behind it and it'll become law and get on Governor Whitmer's desk for signature in the near future. But right now it's bombed up in the Senate. With that, we'd like to move on to some other questions.
One more question over there.
Just a simple question is, counties do the only municipality in county that it qualifies for the social equity?
Yes.
So if we opt out, the 25% gets out. There won't be any place in the county.
Well, there'd be no place, yes, for a social equity eligible individual.
And we will have some kind of regulations by the end of June.
Our goal is to have our zoning ordinances amended and our licensing ordinance amended and have it up and ready and going by June 1st of this year.
And we already have facilities being built.
Well, that's on the medical side. This is on the adult use side.
That's it, well.
Yeah, in terms of that, we already have facilities being built out, for medical marijuana production, processing, etc. The state licenses for the adult use marijuana, these facilities, when many of them will end up being dual licensed, have the ability to apply, so they're not only producing medical marijuana, but also adult use marijuana. So, well, it can't happen yet, but once we complete our ordinance. Okay, well, let's do one more question and then we'll hit the next slide.
Just from what I was hearing just now, right? It sounds like you are opting in to some degree.
Well, the community has, that was the vote of the community, based on, looking at the precincts and the numbers. I mean, that's what this, that the community desires to opt in for adult use marijuana. Is that the question?
Yeah, but it's not like you're planning on having ordinances and things in place by.
Yes, yes. So the community's already spoken and said, this is what we'd like to see happen. The administration is now going down that path, and we have set this timetable.
So it's not a question of at this point.
Well, it's a question of how do we formulate the ordinance, the social equity policy that applies.
I mean, that's the issue, and that's why we're taking up, and we've been criticized for putting it off until June, but that's why we're taking the time. You've heard the issues. There was 5 different kind of licenses under the medical side. Now there's 11 kinds of licenses on the adult use side. Okay, what are we going to do with that? And not all of them are a one-to-one match. We got a social equity program. Okay, what can we do? There's no social equity program on the medical side. There is on the adult use side. Kalamazoo is one of the 41 communities that qualify. Okay, how are we going to deal with that? Those are all things that we have to be concerned about when we're, as administrators, putting together an ordinance. Now, as Pete indicated, the voters in our community said, yes, we want legalized marijuana. We're not trying to roll that back. Our 7 commissioners who give direction to me and the rest of the administrative staff, I think they want to see that as well. So we want to approach it carefully, and that's why we're having these types of meetings to get your input so that we know what should we put in our ordinance so as to give life to the social equity piece. Maybe there are certain types of businesses we don't particularly want to have in Kalamazoo, and we don't have to.
So of the existing marijuana facilities, you're saying there's no doubt they're going to become adult use once this ordinance?
If we say that they can, I'm not familiar with all the businesses, but it wouldn't surprise me if they say, and here's the economics of the situation. Here's where it comes down to it, and what I would believe that those medical providers are going to become adult use providers. The only people, as a medical person, you can sell to and you can create a product for are currently registered patients and currently registered caregivers. That's about 2% of the Michigan population, 2 or 3% of Michigan population has a card that they are a registered caregiver or a patient. I don't know what the statistics are, but for adult use, any person is 21 years of age or older. I have no idea what that percentage of Michigan population is, but it's certainly more than 3%. Okay, so you got a bigger market there. The other thing that makes somewhat of a difference, and again, I don't know, maybe I'm getting too far into the details. You have to be 21 and older to be adult use. You don't have to be 21 to get a medical card. So for those people who can qualify and you're less than 21, you still might be able to get a medical card. The other thing is, and we didn't discuss it because it really wasn't germane what we were after here, but there was a gentleman who talked about taxes. On the medical side, there was a 3% tax. I'm going to say the total tax was 9%. You had your sales tax of 6%. Let's take that off the table for a moment. This was just an additional tax on the sale of medical marijuana. 3% you had to pay. The medical law said that if marijuana becomes legal in Michigan, that 3% tax goes away. So if you're a medical patient, you no longer have to pay the 3% tax. But on the adult use side, in addition to your 6% sales tax, there's a 10% excise tax on top of it. You're paying 16% tax. Now, that 10%, that comes back in part to local communities. The state collects it. They will cover their costs first. For the first 2 years, there's $20 million that has to go to a certified program that are looking into the use of cannabis to assist veterans with their ailments, and in particular veteran suicide. So that's $20 million that's going to go off the top and for the first 2 years. And then after that, municipalities who permit micro businesses and retailers in their community get a prorated share of 15% of that number. So I don't know how many retailers and micro businesses there will be throughout the state, but if the Kalamazoo has a dozen, we get 12 over whatever that denominator is, and then we get that percentage back out of that 15% of the total tax money that's collected by the state. I've done some back of the envelope kind of, and there's been some estimates that this is going to be a $1.5 billion industry in Michigan. That's $1.5 billion in retail sales. Well, the 10% tax of that is I think it's 1.5 million. By the time you get down to it, again, depending on how many there are throughout the state, the city might get around between, I'm guessing, $300,000 to $500,000 a year. Now, that is not going to keep the wolf from the door because the city has a budget of about $120 million in its general fund. So $500,000 doesn't really cut the ice there, but it is something. I mean, we're not going to say no to it, but it's not like we're going to get this windfall of money locally. So that said, I kind of wandered off the topic a little bit, but I want to give you a little bit of ideas to where the money is coming from and what this may impact the community. So we're looking at, okay, what kind of establishments should we permit? Again, we have the list here of all of these adult use ones that are now eligible. Some of them have restrictions on as to who can get a license. But should we permit all of these, or should we only permit some on the adult use side? Now, I can tell you, we permit all of these on the medical side currently under our ordinance. Should we be picking and choosing amongst this group? That's the question. And if we do we say a total limitation? Say no, we're not going to permit B and C because we want to permit the small guys in the business. Well, if you're already B and C in the medical, let's change that a little bit. So we may be chasing businesses out of the community. But if we want to, if there's things we want to do in terms of Class A, we want to permit the consumption establishments or event organizers. What does that look like? What does that mean? And the impact is, I think this is a good one. Is a consumption establishment going to be well run? Is it going to be a neighborhood place where there is no problems, or is it going to be a problem because of what the courts have sometimes called the deleterious secondary effects associated with people going to that business? Is it going to be like, is it a well-run tavern, or is it going to be the sleazy bar that the cops are called too often? So those are some of the issues that we have to deal with. And then finally, if we do cap, if we say, yeah, we're going to permit B and C growers, but we're going to limit the number, how do we create a system that's going to tell us who are the best qualified to operate in compliance with the statute in our community? I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, I don't know who drafted it. Well, I have an idea who drafted it. But whoever drafted this statute really left this as a conundrum for local municipalities to create a competitive process to predict in the future who's going to be a good corporate citizen. I don't know how you do that, but that's the knotted ball of yarn that they left us with. So those are the issues we'd like your feedback on. I'm going to start with Lady Dare.
I would initially suggest that at a minimum you have at least the amount that you have for medical currently. You need to, at a minimum, match that. Also take into consideration if you have a growing facility that has staff, 9 times out of 10, they're going to own their own processing center as well. So you would want to not limit that. On the medical side, there's limitation on the number of seats or staff. You eliminate the type of economic development that that particular industry company will bring to the community. So those are just some idiosyncrasies in the actual operation of the facility that I think cities need to take into consideration of those who have already invested in your community and are operating and how they're operating their facilities. They should at least be recognized for that. And then that should be your lower bar.
And just so that so as to give you some context, what we have, the city clerk has issued 26 licenses for various medical marijuana facilities in our community. Not all of them are up and operating. There's only 8 of the 26 are actually today operating. And of those, it appears that out of those 8, 6 of them are provisioning centers. 1 is a processor, and 1 is the safety compliance facility. So that's all that's operating in Kalamazoo at the present time. Now, there are other people in the pipeline. There are some growers and some processors, and there's also several more provisioning centers that are in the pipeline. They've not got their local license, or they're not capable of operating yet because they haven't been approved by the state, or if they have been approved, they're in the pipeline to get approved. So, just so you know, primarily it's Kalamazoo's provisioning center-centric kind of community with 1 processor and 1 safety compliance.
And we did have in December, when we had that window where we were accepting additional medical marijuana facility licenses, we did have 1 additional grow, a provisioning center, and a safety compliance. So there is now a second safety compliance with which provisional certificates been issued. That one was on Manchester, actually. But yeah, so those are, that was what was occurred with that open application acceptance period in December. There's 3 more provisional certificates in addition to what we already had in the prior year. Okay, so
2 things. A, for the consumption establishments, the question in regards to how should we limit that. I think that obviously you should stick to the exact same limitations you place on liquor licenses. Anything stricter would be pretty offensive, honestly. Alcohol is much more detrimental to the community than marijuana ever has been or ever will be. And if you start limiting adult consumption establishments for marijuana in a stricter manner than you limit your liquor licenses, that seems a little unfair, a little hypocritical. As far as what type of licensed establishments should be permitted, on the adult use column, how many of those are permitted by the state statute?
By the state statutes, they all are in some way, because these up above my fingers are hands. These are all directly mentioned in the law. The law then says state law can create other licenses if it so chooses. And these ones on the 4 on the bottom are the ones that were created, I'm sorry, not backwards, excess grower. Those excess grower and the bottom 3 were created by the state by regulatory.
So I think that should be your answer. So what type of licensed establishments you should be permitted? What the state has decided should be what the city allows. I do believe there may be some caps on Class C growers, Class B growers, but I think for you to think it's okay for you to limit a law that the state has passed is maybe not the best. I know you've gotten a little bit of negative feedback for the delays. I understand both sides of it, but I think negative feedback will be a lot more prevalent if you start limiting business types that are allowed within the city.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you go over the breakdown of numbers you were saying towards the end? You were saying you estimated 1.5 million and it was 10% that they were getting? And then from there, what was the breakdown?
Again, I've only done kind of a back of the envelope, so I don't have that with me. I'm assuming, and you have to make some assumptions. 1.5 billion retail sales, 10% tax, so you divide that by 10%. That's 150 million, and then you have to take 20 million off of that for veterans programs that the statute says it has to go through for the first 2 years. So that's $20 million off the top. Then, again, you have to make an assumption. The state is also entitled to recover its costs for administering the program. I have no idea what that is, so that comes off the top. And then whatever is left is divided 35% to schools, 35% to roads, 15% to municipalities, I think another 15 to counties. And so when I say municipalities, pardon?
You could get as much as 15.
No, the 15% of that big pot comes to cities, villages, and townships that permit retailers and microbusinesses. And then you take all the number of microbusinesses and retailers that are licensed in the state, whatever that number is, and then you count the number in your community, and then you do the division. So make it easy. If there are, I'm going to make it really easy, 100 provisioning centers in the state. Kalamazoo has 2. We get 2% of whatever that number is, out of that 15% we have to share with all the other cities, villages, and townships. So you have to make some assumptions. And again, I've made some assumptions, and I've come down to where I think we might be able to get some money from the state. But again, if my assumptions are off, my figures are going to be off.
I think for zoning, micro businesses should be allowed to congregate and collect in smaller areas. They have plant limit of 150 plants in a community the size of Kalamazoo. Those businesses are liable for that product. By forcing them to have distances, you're going to force them to run into problems where customers come there, and then there's nothing there. If you allow them to collect in areas, then they can share that burden and they can share that foot traffic. Also, possibly allowing micro businesses to have consumption options as well is another way to support the small businesses by giving them another reason to do it. Then allowing the larger retailers to then deliver to those businesses if they run out of product, because larger retailers are specifically allowed to deliver consumption zones.
I have some comments and questions. For the November 1st application, is that continuous or is that closed?
I'm sorry, what? For what?
The December application period that I mentioned, that was for the medical marijuana facility licenses, and that was a 2-week window in December 2019 to see if there was any other, we had accepted any in 2019 up to that point in the applications for the medical ones. So we
Even with the city. Even
Pardon?
with the city's application window.
The city,
The city's application window, the state's application window is wide open.
Right. But
what ours look like?
no, yes, on the medical side, it stays wide open. You can apply to that, but you have to have a city license as well. And we're only permitting medical at this point, and we had a 2-week window that opened in December for additional medical license applications. So that window is closed. And there were 3 licenses that were granted out of those applications.
I think Mr. Chairman said something about a program with the Missouri Department of Corrections and making sure we have kind of like a program for those people getting out. And he said how that Department of Corrections, I feel like they should be more involved in this process, especially when it comes to equity with certain people. Enough people at the table or enough voices to benefit them and how they need to get them on board. Because the Department of Corrections, they do have input. They do deal with a lot of nonprofits who have programs like these, and they go off the city ordinances, state laws, and things like that too. So it's not as for everything.
Earlier when you said that, say we allow certain medical licenses to become recreational, is that, or asked me about that last week, is that your understanding that that's something the city can do?
What? That you can
To opt out of certain medical facilities?
I think we can. I think we don't have to necessarily permit everything. We can opt out in December, hot in December, not hot peppers.
There's a statute that was written that says you can't bar a medical, a facility as a medical marijuana facility, you cannot bar it in indulgence facilities. It's in the statute.
Statute says they can share facilities, yes.
No, it says you cannot bar.
I know what you're talking about. I disagree with that interpretation. There's no court that's interpreted it.
But the other side of that is if we look at what Helmsley Township adopted recently.
So we have a facility in the township and a facility here in the city.
And you do, okay. Yeah, so anyways, the adult use marijuana ordinance that Helmsley Township adopted, it shows, if my memory serves me right, they have an event organizer, but they don't allow for outdoor event licensing.
Right, they allow all growers, processors, provisioning centers.
And they didn't do consumption establishments.
I do license stuff. I'm talking about current medical facilities.
Okay. That's right. Yes.
Like grows, processors, provisioning centers, safety centers.
Well, those I don't think it's going to be that difficult for us to categorize and help formulate an ordinance around. It's the struggle is more the unknown with the new category types that we have to get. So we haven't made any plan, and obviously it's a blank slate right now, but these, the grow, processor, safety compliance, secure transport, retailer, those align with the types of licenses we've already issued for medical marijuana facilities. So why would we think that that's counter to what this community wants? So yeah, it's really more, so those, to answer your question, those, to me at least, are not problematic license types.
So how come we can't just get that station signed or some recreational licensing on these medical?
Because we have to first craft an ordinance, and we've got to craft a social equity policy in addition to that. And we need to amend the licensing procedure. So we have some steps we still need to go through there.
It's been since November 2018 now. So why has it taken so long? Why have you been sitting around doing nothing about it up until recently? Why is this just now a discussion?
So what took place was we adopted a medical marijuana ordinance. We then had to finalize the licensing procedure and then figure out when we were going to allow for applications to be received by the city council. And when we began receiving applications in 2018, we received a number of applications. This was an entirely new license for us. It was a series of 5 different licenses. So we spent a lot of that time working with these individuals that wanted to apply for medical marijuana licenses. And then once they got to the provisional certificate process, then they needed to either renovate a building or build a new building, which again, they were working with city staff for their individual projects. But that was, that used a lot of city resources. So, and obviously very quickly on the heels of the medical marijuana legislation being adopted and the licensing program being set up, all of a sudden we're talking about adult use marijuana and the citizen initiative passed. Well, frankly, we weren't prepared, to turn the corner yet. I guess is the best way to put it. We were just, getting in pretty deep with these licenses for medical marijuana facilities and business owners and improvements they were making to properties around the city.
But it seems that cities that have a lot more serious issues going on have jumped on this a lot quicker. Like Battle Creek, which, that no judgment or hate in my heart for Battle Creek, but that place is wrong. Went ahead and succeeded. They've got recreational facilities over that. We should be doing better. I just don't think you guys need time. I think you're trying to find a way out of this, maybe? Because it seems like the question should be, what should we allow?
the other thing is, we proceeded cautiously with the medical marijuana ordinance. We had no formal legal challenges like other communities had. Clyde can speak to that. Clyde did a great job of helping steer us clear of that and the crafting of that ordinance. But that's the other part. If we end up rushing forward with an ordinance and get it adopted, all of a sudden, we've got loopholes, we have legal challenges, that's a even larger drain on our local resources. We end up in court fighting multiple battles, so we definitely don't want to rush into anything, and that's why we asked for the 6 months.
Yeah, it should be pointed out that when the city adopted its medical marijuana ordinance, we issued around 18 or so provisional licenses in late July of 2018. A year passed and those provisional licenses were good for 1 year. A year later, I don't believe any of those people who'd gotten a provisional license were up and running. We had to go, a special ordinance had to be passed to extend those provisional licenses for another year, because otherwise we could have said, the curtain's closed, you didn't get your business up and running in a year, you're out of luck. We didn't do that. We gave a dispensation to another year, so that's July of 2019. We extended it for another year. So now we're going into 2020, where people who are still seeking to get that medical license. Now, as I indicated, while we get granted 3 more, we granted in total 26 in 2018. Out of those 26, like I said, 8 are up and running. And that's on the medical side. So I don't see, and so we did not know what to expect in terms of, is the marijuana industry going to be a bane or a boon to the community?
How do you expect them to get their businesses up and running if they can't?
The business up and running was based on a business model that was aimed at medical marijuana. Only in 2018 is when the electorate said we're going to legalize it. Okay, we legalized it. And the experience of Kalamazoo was that we don't have an experience. But we're not saying no to it. In fact, we do plan to have ordinances in place no later than June 1st. That's the goal that we've been given.
There are so many breweries in this town. You have plenty of experience in this.
Well, as you said, breweries and marijuana are 2 different things.
I think that y'all doing a pretty good job, okay? It's never best to be first in most things. So that Powder Creek did have a lot of facilities open, and then it has stuff closed. So that you guys are doing a good job ensuring that you're learning from other people's mistakes, and then you having a forum like this so you can get our feedback to understand what we do and what we don't want. As being a 41-year-old lifetime Kalamazoo resident, I got something to say, and I want to be part of it, and I was going to.
Thank you. Section 6.5 of the Informational Law, Marijuana Regulation and Tax Act. A municipality may not adopt an ordinance that restricts or prohibits a marijuana grower, a marijuana processor, or a marijuana retailer from operating within a single facility or at a location shared with an operating non-FLA facility. Okay, so local law came into effect with MRTRA. After the adoption of the MMFLA, municipalities didn't have to operate. Kalamazoo did. And now they have operating MMFLA facilities. These are the facilities that 6.5 is meant to protect and are being significantly disadvantaged by municipalities violating this section of law. Also,
Well, is there a question there?
Savings clause that America directly repealed the 3% patient tax and replaced it with a 10% excise tax. And it's to protect the communities from missing out on this tax incentive that requires existing operational facilities by law to be allowed to operate its equivalent license at the same location. We ask that the city adopt a resolution acknowledging the MRTRA section 6.5 and allow currently operating marijuana facilities to apply and receive their attestation 2C so that they may be given a chance
Kalamazoo Township is already in, and they surround us. They deliver to our customers. We'll continue to actively solicit immediate redress of this unfair situation. If these local operations fail, there won't be jobs, there'll be layoffs. Or else they'll have to sell out to a multi-state organization, and we won't have local operators that prefer to hire locally skilled talent.
Okay, questions about license types? Okay.
Hey,
Yes.
what percentage of your job, Peter and Clyde, is really supposed to be taken up by marijuana? Do you or do you not have other things, other responsibilities in this city that are pressing on you? Number two, if you were to pass something right now and just rubber stamp all the medical things, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't it be really, really legally difficult to add social equity requirements and the social equity piece later and require things of those businesses? Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
We do need to establish our social equity policy now in concert with adopting the ordinance for adult use marijuana. And as far as the answer to the first question you had, part of my job is to craft ordinances as conditions of the community change. And, but yes, working on the marijuana ordinances has been very time intensive, I'll say that. Okay, you sir.
So is there a way to do kind of what Mr. over here is talking about, where you do incremental change, where you allow the currently operating medical facilities to get their state license while you take the time to really, and I really applaud the city for wanting to do a really good job with the social equity piece, and make sure that these other license types, if it's what the city wants, can be implemented like appropriately. Like why isn't there a way to just issue the attestations that are required for these guys to get their state license to operate on the right side, while at the same time doing all this hard work that needs to be done to really address the issues of the social equity?
But here's the issue, because the state requires, if you're going to get one of these licenses, just an attestation from the city clerk that the location of the business is in compliance with the city's zoning code. Okay? Our city zoning code has nothing in about adult use, geared toward medical. So here's what it takes to amend the zoning code. Okay?
You need to amend the zoning code, though.
How can the city clerk give that attestation to the state if our zoning code says that we're only going to talk about medical facilities?
But you allow retail businesses in different areas. This is a marijuana retailer, so at this current stage, why couldn't you say, yes, the refinery at 3650 Alabama is in compliance with the requirements right now, and therefore is eligible for a state license? I don't understand. Or Kalamazoo, or National Care by Design, or any other shops in town. Why can't you just allow that?
All those license types in the zoning ordinance are identified as medical marijuana facilities.
Right, but you have not issued the zoning ordinance that says adult use businesses are only allowed in these zoning areas. So there's no need to amend any zoning. There's no need to do that. The only reason that you have to have these special places to allow zoning is because you wrote into your zoning code that medical facilities are only allowed in A, B, or C. So if you don't yet have that requirement in your zoning code, there is no need to amend the zoning ordinance to allow these adult use retailers, as long as they're in a place that allows for retail sales, or industrial or agricultural use.
Well, that creates a problem, because now you're opening up commercial zones for adult use marijuana where we may not want them. Because there's more than one classification of zone of commercial zone.
Right.
So what you're suggesting is that any commercial zone that permits retail would be permitted to have an adult use marijuana.
Well, but limited only to NOFLA. Current licensees, so they're only ones that are currently.
You're
Please
messing
don't
up
get
our
ordinance.
Well then,
Okay. I understand the point.
It doesn't take an ordinance to do this.
But let's keep
well,
the questions
it
moving.
takes an ordinance for the, I guess we're going to have two ordinances, the zoning code ordinance and a licensing ordinance.
When all said and done, right.
And so what you're suggesting is that the city permit unlicensed and unzoned businesses to operate,
They're not unlicensed, they're not zoned, they're licensed by the state, which is the only
but
requirement.
not local.
We don't yet have a local ordinance, they're actually, contrary to the letter of the law.
Okay, so, yeah, but the other part.
I'm just curious why there's not a way to do this incrementally to let the residents of Kalamazoo support local Kalamazoo businesses to get the marijuana that Senate Representative municipality voted in support of.
So, yeah, one piece that we don't, even if we were to go down that path, we don't have a social equity policy in place to have folks abide by when they make their application. They don't use marijuana. So we would need to, that policy is part of part of what we are putting together right now and what we already have done, like you personally adopted. We're going to run out of time here if we don't keep moving through the questions, sir.
So, to answer your first question, what types of licensed establishments should be permitted? I think one of the easiest decisions to make is for safety and compliance facilities. They are involved in manufacture, sales, or consumption. They're one of the most highly regulated types of licenses on your list. And I really think that there should be something done with that particular class of licensee to accelerate permit for recreational marijuana testing, if at all possible.
Thank you.
One of the things that we're trying to cross is that any licensed entity for medical in Kalamazoo is being punished because of the delay. We are not the normal type of business that can run a day and borrow money to keep ourselves going for 6 months while these rules are written. Picture a store in Kalamazoo, a storefront in Kalamazoo, and a storefront in Kalamazoo Township. This one can do everything, this one can only do medical. This one is losing its business. I know there's only, you said there's only 8 up and going right now. They're not making it because of what they can't survive. And that, it's all going, I'm sorry, they can't survive in that. It's all going right. It's hurting us. People are throwing up contracts back.
And this is a problem that affects not just Kalamazoo. Being from state compliance facility, this affects the industry across the state. We test for companies from Detroit to Detour in the UP. Without being able to test for recreational use or adult use, we miss out on business from other municipalities that already have gone through and developed their ordinances and their social equity plans. How many of these are the 41 communities that have been zoned or that have been determined as social equity zones? How many of them have ordinances already written and already have their social equity plans developed? Why don't we, have you reached out to all of them so we can draw ideas?
Yes, we are collecting information from them. And I understand what you're saying, and, maybe the timing of when the citizen initiative for adult use marijuana, maybe they could answer quickly after medical marijuana legislation. I don't know what to say to that. We have to inventory, get the job done, and that's what our plan is. Any other questions on license types? Yes, ma'am.
I have a comment related to that, and that's looking at the bottom of the consumption establishment, you have to organize under that license. There's a couple of things just to consider there that I bring up. One is that it's not legal to drive while under the influence of marijuana, and so with those three, I think you have a lot of people that will be driving. So it's just something that from a policing standpoint, I think should be considered before the city agrees to allow those type of licenses. And And then the other is that currently in the ordinances, there's, the ordinance that medical, or excuse me, a marijuana odor emission versus a reasonable chemical use in enjoyment or property should be measured against the objective standards of a reasonable personal normal sensitivity. So I think when you think about those as well, there are certain requirements for an industrial facility for growing marijuana to have certain ventilation. But when you think about a consumption establishment or an event, that ordinance would need to be considered as well, potentially modified. I don't agree with the modification of it because I think it's a good ordinance. But do you think that if that continues to apply, when you open the door of the consumption establishment, if there's an open air event, if you would have an odor that a person, a reasonable person of normal sensitivity may complain, which then you also have a police situation. So a couple of those things that you can say.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
If the city does not license consumption lounges, event planners, and temporary events, I will be one of the first persons that says I'm going to ballot initiative that this year. And I know we have until July to put signatures in for ballot initiative or something like that. And I will remind everybody that it's an election cycle year. It's a presidential election. Last year, a lot of things didn't pass. It wasn't a presidential election cycle. It was an off year. So just to let you guys know, today is
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Is one of the 8 people waiting to open their medical facility in Kalamazoo would be a terrible stride in the wrong direction to limit the fact that a Class C grower could not go into the adult use aspect. And a big part of going to the adult use side of it is the social equity plan in the licensing process. Anyone that is applying for the adult use license must submit that plan. It also would be something that could and will be shared with the city prior to the ordinance being done, which would allow you to look at examples of the people who are in the community already and help shape the process. I couldn't be a bigger supporter of the plan, but I'm not a big supporter of limiting the business model when you can't sell to the adult user program. I mean, I've spent 4 years with both of you working on something special for this community and look forward to enacting a social equity plan that works, providing a safe working environment, bringing many jobs to the community for people who love cannabis and love being in this workspace, giving them the opportunity to have health insurance, 401ks, banking. All of that's been established. So we just need you, and I know you guys are going in the right direction, it is so stringent to go on the medical side, to be able to roll over into the adult use side, which is another stringent cycle that goes into the licensing through the state. You know, we work with you and want to work with you to be part of the community, and I wholeheartedly feel that, I agree if you need to limit the Class Cs, I understand that, but for a Class C medical grower, we should be able to have the opportunity.
I understand that. You don't want to see us in your facilities. We've already licensed in our community.
I mean, I went through that licensing process in June of 2018 and been building a facility ever since, about to go online. So the fact is that it would be really a big slap in the face to me to say, oh, by the way, you can't use that common space, which would be against that particular section, that you 6.51 or whatever. But the fact is that you should embrace the people that have embraced your community as well.
Thanks for that. All right, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and just in an effort to compromise, is it possible that the city could consider adopting a social equity program that matches what the state is recommending as far as a minimum? Then you could possibly publish it, have your public hearing, and we could move your timeline up a little quicker versus waiting till June. And I've written a couple of these programs in other municipalities, and as the gentleman said, a lot of these individuals who have invested in these types of businesses, they offer social programs with nonprofits in the community. You can help them create a development program that benefits the city and its citizens and people in the community, not just hiring someone with a criminal record or a criminal background. I mean, it can be a very simple process. Understanding it takes time to draft it, but it doesn't have to be convoluted. And it could be something that can perhaps work as a compromise for those that are already established, because it is a very significant economic detriment to those who are operating who are not able to come online right now with their company. And, you mentioned why it's taking so long. I don't think people truly understand the amount of capitalization it costs to create these businesses. And it is a huge endeavor, and to have put that much into the community and not be able to move forward is significant. So I think there has to be a balance. I think we as business owners can understand the time constraints, but we also could maybe work towards a minimum threshold that will meet the needs of a social equity program that is compliant. And then if we're going to do some type of scoring criteria, it's incumbent upon us as business owners to make sure that we offer something credible to you and have that is sustainable for a period of time. And I think there's a balance we can strike to satisfy everyone's needs here.
Very good, very good. Any other additional comments, questions? I do have one card here, which I will answer.
That was the last slide.
That was the last slide. Okay, so we're on the last slide. Let me just fit this in. One of the cards was passed up. Assuming the ordinance is adopted in June, what administrative policies / procedures will need to be created by staff to begin the process of accepting and approving license applications? I wanted to read this because at this point in time, we're thinking the licensing process will be very similar. I say very similar, it's not going to mirror exactly because we're adding the social equity component, but it will be very similar to what we did with the medical marijuana license facility applications. So that's not going to be a hurdle. Then the second part of the question was, what is the real timeline the city would be looking at after adoption of the ordinance? Based on when it gets adopted in July by the city commission, we have a 14-day. What was it? Okay.
Our current timeline is to have the ordinances before the city commission at their, maybe as early as the second meeting in April, or at the latest, the first meeting in May. They'd come back to the next commission meeting, which would be either, again, in April, the first meeting in May, or at the later, the second meeting in May. And then the ordinances go into effect 10 days after they're adopted. So our goal is to have the ordinances in place and operational by the end of May. Then, as part of that, because we're going to try to mirror as much as possible the medical licensing process, the clerk is already familiar with that. He would probably make a few changes to his procedures, but they would mirror the medical side very closely. So, ostensibly, as early as late May, or certainly by June 1st, individuals could be applying to the state for their adult use, and also applying to the city for the local license.
Okay.
So operational by end of June then?
Well, I assume we could start taking applications. I guess that's an administrative issue as to when the clerk's not here. So, and that's one of the reasons the June 1st date was picked. so as to accommodate his schedule. He's got to run 4 elections this year. And the first one is going to be in just a few weeks. The next one is in early May, the next one's in August, and then the next one's in November. So he's got that window basically between May and August when he's going to have some time to do some of this stuff. Because it is, I don't want to say a burden, but it is additional work that is on his office when he's got to have people come in when he opens that window for license applications.
Any other questions or comments, thoughts? There are appropriate locations for certain license types. There's some comments thrown out about the class A's, if there's only 100 plans, that would be something the city should give consideration to, and lesser intensive commercial zones. A comment was made earlier, consolidation or allowing micro businesses to group together. That comment was made. Is there anything else? We've covered a lot, we've made a lot of notes, I know this is being recorded. Yes, sir.
Is there any possibility that the city would allow Class A grows as a home occupation? To allow a lot of these caregivers who already have like 72 plants in their home growing, is it subject to the same inspections and power and fire safety, all of those inspections, but do you think the city would allow that?
The state doesn't allow it. The state said no residential.
Yeah.
I guess that one has been mentioned by the city.
Didn't the state just say no strictly residential zones, like it was residential only zone? Then
No, I believe what it says is in a residential structure.
Okay, all right.
So it's like an agricultural, like you can have a farm with a residential structure, but it's agricultural zone, so
Gotcha.
you just can't have anything else.
Anyone else?
Well, thank you for coming. You've been very helpful with the feedback that you've given us, the questions you've asked. We're going to have another session like this. You don't have to attend that one. You're welcome to. Next Wednesday at 6:30 in the evening.
There's the same location. So what we intend to do is we are going to do this question and answer information up on our website, city council website.